It was 1692 in the winter, and Massachusetts didn't feel just cold. It felt like a punishment. Like the sky was the color of a bruised plum. The ground was frozen, hard enough to crack plow, and inside the homes, the fire was the only thing standing between the family and the encroaching dark. For one young woman, the cold wasn't the worst of it. She had been accused of something she didn't understand. She'd been dragged from her kitchen, through the mud of the village, and into the room where the air was thick, and the smell of wet wool and stale breath of men who already decided she was guilty. She looked up at the man sitting behind the desk. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a neighbor. He looked like a judge. And as he began to read from the papers in front of him, she realized that this room wasn't just a place of law. It was a throat, and she was being swallowed whole. She would never walk out of that room again. And they say, if you stand in that same spot today, you can still hear the floorboards groan under the weight of everything that was lost inside the witch house. Welcome back to That Haunted Show. I'm your host, Vincent Knight, and tonight we're going into the deepest part of American history. We're going to talk about a place that isn't just haunted by ghosts, it's haunted by the very history of fear itself. Grab a drink, lock your doors, and turn the lights down low. Let's get into it. Salem in the late 1600s was not a place of comfort. It was a hard, religious, deeply suspicious colony settlement where fear spread faster than truth. You have to understand how these people lived. They were hundreds of miles from anything they called home, surrounded by a vast, unmapped wilderness that they truly believed was the devil's backyard. They didn't have news, they didn't have much light, and they didn't have any concept of mental health. If a cow died, it wasn't bad luck, it was a curse. If a child had a fit, it wasn't an illness, it was a possession. Every single moment of their lives was a high-stakes war between the saved and the damned. They were so terrified of the dark that they looked for monsters in every shadow. And when they finally found a reason to start blaming their neighbors, they didn't just stop at one or two people. The panic was like a wildfire in a dry forest. Once it started, nobody was safe. That's the atmosphere that built the witch house. It wasn't built for a normal family. It was built for a world that was constantly being hunted by hell. Let's look at the life of Martha Corey. Martha was a devoted member of the church, but she had a sharp tongue. She questioned the trials, and that was enough to turn the town against her. She was brought into a room, into the witch house, to be questioned. Imagine being her. You're dragged into Judge Corwin's house. The room is freezing. The floorboards are uneven. And sitting across from you are men who have already made up their minds. As you try to speak, a group of teenage girls start screaming. They fall to the floor. They clutch their throats. They claim your spirit is pinching them. You look at the judge for justice, but he doesn't look at you. He looks at the girls. He asks, "Why do you torment these children?" And you say, "I am an innocent woman." But it doesn't matter. The courtroom isn't a place of law. It's a theater of cruelty. You see the judge nod. You see the scribes writing down lies as if they were gospel. You realize, in that moment, that the witch house isn't a home. It's a meat grinder. And you're next. Visitors to the witch house today talk about the mood, cold spots, a feeling of being watched. There's a story from just a few years ago. A visitor walking through the cellar, a space that feels disconnected from the rest of the world. Now, if you actually go to the witch house today, there's one place that almost every visitor talks about: the cellar. It's not just a basement. It feels like the earth is trying to swallow you back up. There's a story told by a tour group about a young girl who wandered a few steps down into the dark. Her parents say she stopped dead at the bottom of the stairs. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just turned white. When they asked her what happened, she told them, "A cold hand reached out and touched my hair." People describe the air down there as heavy, like oxygen is being sucked out of the room. Others say they hear faint rhythmic scraping, like someone dragging a stone across the wood, even when the house is empty. It's as if the house has a memory of all the people who were kept there while they waited to hear if they were going to be hanged. It doesn't feel like a museum. It feels like a holding cell. And when you're standing in that dark, you get the distinct, skin-crawling feeling that the walls aren't just wood and stone. They're ears, and they're listening to everything that you think. So if you ever go to Salem, and you find yourself standing in front of that dark old house, don't just look at the architecture. Look at what it represents. Because that house saw fear turn into law. It saw accusations become executions. If places can remember, then the witch house remembers everything. And remember, the past isn't always as far away as we think. Thanks for joining me on this episode of That Haunted Show. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, hit the like button, and let me know in the comments below if you've ever been to Salem. If you're over on Facebook, give us a share. And if you're over on Spotify, thank you so much for listening. And give us a 5-star review. It really helps push the show further out there. And if you have any recommendations on any haunted places that you'd like covered on the show, please let me know. Until next time, stay safe and watch what you say in the dark. Bye-bye.